Good afternoon and welcome to the July 29th meeting of the Audit Committee. To help slow the transmission of COVID-19 and protect the health and safety of the community, City Council, as well as board and commission meetings, will continue to be closed to the public for in-person attendance. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes, to practice social distancing. The meetings can be viewed on local cable, Charter Cable Channel 6 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99, or streaming in high definition online at glendaleca.gov/live, youtube.com/myglendale, and a free app called ScreenWeave on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices. Choose Glendale TV from the menu. For public comments and questions during the meeting, call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting these questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person during the Glendale Audit Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Audit Committee member Ed Kashadurian.
Here.
Alex Parajon.
Present.
And Chair Zaria Amirian.
Here. Let's move on to the next item, please.
Item number 2, business agenda. Report of recording secretary regarding posting of agenda. The agenda for the July 29th, 2021 Audit Committee meeting was posted on July 26, 2021 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Okay, the next item, oral communications.
Item number 3, oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. The committee may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The Audit Committee Chair may refer the matter to staff for investigation and report.
I do not see any calls. However, if we do get some calls in, I'd be happy to move this item to encourage public participation. Let's move on to the next item, please.
Item number 4, approval of minutes. Minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held on April 29th, 2021.
I move to approve.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Audit Committee member Ed Kashadurian.
Yes.
Alex Parajon.
Yes.
And Chair Zaria Amirian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item number 5, action items. A, election of Audit Committee Chair.
Okay, so let's do this. I'd like to actually, let's address 5B first. Let's go with the, 5B first, and then we'll talk about 5A and 5C.
5B, election of Audit Committee Secretary.
Okay, so let's open up nominations. I would like to nominate Ms. Ani Antonesian, our internal auditor, as the Audit Committee Secretary for another year. Mr. Paron or Mr. Khashadurian, do we have any other nominations that you'd like to consider?
Negative. I second your nomination as well.
The same here.
Okay, nominations are closed. Roll call.
Audit Committee member Ed Kashadurian.
Yes.
Alex Parajon.
Yes.
And Chair Zaria Amirian.
Yes. Congratulations, Ms.
Thank you.
Antonesian. And thank you for your service during a tough year to be first year as secretary. We appreciate the work that you've done.
My pleasure.
Okay, let's go to 5A, please.
Item 5A, election of Audit Committee Chair.
So my understanding here is that we have a new audit committee member that was announced during our last meeting. And my understanding is she's going to be sworn in during probably the next week or so. So she'll join us at our next meeting. So, we do have a quorum. We can, hold the nominations. What is the possibility of actually moving this item to the next meeting so that we have, at least the new member can chime in as well?
Mr. Chair, Lucy Varpetian, City Attorney's Office. If there's consensus amongst the members, you can certainly continue this item to the next meeting.
What,
Can we have a discussion on this?
yeah, of course. Mr. Parham, what do you think?
Obviously, Chair, you've been doing a pretty good job for the last X number of years. I lost track already, but I think the discussion will be is if you're have still interest in serving as the Royals Chair, then I don't think there's reason to wait. But if you're not, then I think we should consider postponing this for the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Parham. Mr. Khashadurian, any thoughts?
Mr. Chair, Chairman Amirian, yes, I agree, definitely. I think, you would be my nominee, to be honest with you. So if we think that, do you have any reason not to want to continue? Then yes, that might be an issue, an item for us to discuss later on. But if not, then I suggest that we vote on this item today.
Okay, I appreciate both of your input on this and the sentiment as well. I am open. This is going to be my last year on the committee. I am being termed out. I've served as a commissioner in the city or a committee member for, gosh, I think I'm at 17 years. So this will be my last year on audit unless that law is somehow changed. But I am willing to serve, and considering that we, kind of have a consensus here, I think we should just go ahead and move forward.
Then I nominate the current chair, Sarah Amirian, to continue as the chair.
I second that.
Okay, any other nominations? I'll give it like 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Audit Committee Member Ed Khashadurian,
Yes.
Alex Parajon,
Yes.
and Chair Zaria Mirian.
Yes. And thank you again. It means a lot to me to have the trust and support of the committee members. And I will look to serve out my final year on the Audit Committee with the same effort that I've put forth my entire time here as a commissioner in the city of Glendale. So thank you. Let's move on to action item 5C.
5C, Annual Report to City Council.
Okay, I have here our annual report to the City Council, and I am going to read this into the record. Dated July 29th, 2021. Dear Mayor Devine and City Council members, each year, the Audit Committee must report our actions and activities to the City Council per Glendale Municipal Code Section 2.82.100. The purpose of this memo is to communicate our activities for the period of July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. The Audit Committee met 4 times during fiscal year 2020-21, where we were provided with the financial and budgetary updates and internal audit activity reports. In 2018, the Audit Committee started to conduct paperless meetings in keeping with the City Council's priorities of fiscal responsibility and sustainability. I am pleased to report that the paperless meeting methodology made the transition to conducting the new audio-video conference public meeting format seamless during the COVID-19 work period. 3 of these 4 meetings were conducted with a combination of in-person and call-in methods due to COVID-19 social distancing requirements, and 1 meeting was 100% virtual. Besides these regular meetings, I have also worked with city staff regularly via email and video conference, sharing my thoughts on emerging risks and concerns. The Audit Committee assists the City Council by reviewing financial information and management reports, and by providing independent recommendations regarding the scope, priority, and methods of audit-related activities within the city. Despite the evolving situation with the COVID-19 pandemic, the Audit Committee continued to carry out our responsibilities during this unprecedented time. The financial activities by the Audit Committee include received audit communications from Clifton Larson Allen LLP on their responsibilities, scope, and activities for the annual audit of the city for the period ending June 30th, 2020. Received and reviewed the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR, for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. Received financial and budgetary reports from the Finance Department and City Management. The internal audit activities by the Audit Committee include received and reviewed the fiscal year 2020-21 internal audit annual work plan, and monitored progress in addressing the risk priorities for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. Reviewed internal audit reports as they were issued, were briefed on all completed audit assignments, including completed continuous audits, by internal audit staff and department representatives, reviewed the progress of quarterly follow-up activities, and discussed the action plans related to outstanding audit issues reaching specified criteria. Monitored the types of projects performed by internal audit staff to ensure ongoing independence in the internal audit function. The Audit Committee members wish to express our appreciation to city staff that support our efforts and keep us informed of events and issues in the city. We look forward to continuing to serve the interests of the City of Glendale in the coming year. Respectfully submitted on my behalf as the chair, and Audit Committee members Edmund Khachaturian, Alejandro Parajon, and Thomas Patrick O'Shaughnessy, who just recently in June resigned from his position. Since this is an action item, I will need a motion, please.
I move to approve.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Audit Committee Member Ed Khachaturian,
Yes.
Alex Parajon,
Yes.
and Chair Zaria Amirian.
Yes. Let's move on to item number 6.
Item number 6, reports and information.
I am going to move item 6C to the front of the list, please.
Item 6C, report from Clifton Larson Allen LLP on the audit of fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. Teresa Clark, Finance Accounting Manager.
Good afternoon, Chair Amiriam and committee members. My name is Teresa Clark, Accounting Manager. I'm here today to present the information about the city's fiscal year 2020-21 audit. The city's current external auditor is Clifton Larson Allen, or CLA. This is their second year with the city under the current contract. For the fiscal year 2021 audit, the CLA staff has already started the preliminary fieldwork last June 14. When the first draft of the comprehensive annual financial report is completed in October, CLA will be back again for another 3 weeks to complete the audit. We expect to get the opinion letter from CLA at the end of November and to present the comprehensive annual financial report to the City Council in early December. We will be back here to present the audit result to the Audit Committee in January 2022. So at this point, I would like to call Daphne Munoz, Engagement Partner from Clifton Larson Allen, for her presentation.
Good afternoon. Let me just go share my screen real quick. And everybody can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good afternoon. Again, my name is Daphne Munoz, principal from Clifton Larson Allen, and I am here today to discuss the fiscal year 2020 audit. My presentation will cover our scope of services, our responsibility, as well as management's responsibilities, and the audit team and the timing of the audit. First, for the scope of our audit, we will be performing a financial statement audit, a financial audit of the financial statements for the city, which will be included in the annual comprehensive financial report. The city spent more than $750,000 in federal grants and therefore is required to have a single audit of federal grants, which is a compliance audit on expenditures that are federally funded. We will also perform an audit of the financial statements of the GWP's electric utility and water utility funds. We will also perform a review of the compliance with Senate Bill 341 with relates to housing successor annual report. We will also perform an agreed upon procedures report on the Federal Transit Administration as set forth by the National Transit Database Uniform System of Accounts. We will be performing a certification of the annual report related to Section 8 submitted through the REACT system. And finally, we will also be performing an audit of the financial statements of the ICIS JPA, and if necessary, which I do not believe will, ICIS spent more than $750,000 this year, therefore they probably will not be subject to single audit. Our main responsibility is to form and express opinions on whether the financial statements that are prepared by management are fairly presented in conformity with GAAP. Our audit will be performed in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as well as generally accepted government auditing standards. We will design our audit to obtain reasonable assurance whether the financial statements are free of material misstatements. Reasonable assurance means what we are not going to attempt to ensure that all data contained in the financial statements are 100% accurate. Rather, we will try to affirm on a test basis that the financial statements are free from material misstatements. Our audit will also include a consideration of internal controls over financial reporting as a basis for designing the audit procedures that are appropriate in the circumstances, but we will not be expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of the city's internal control over financial reporting. Our audit will also include performing tests of the city's compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grants. Again, the objective of our test is not to provide an opinion on the compliance with these provisions. However, it does not preclude us that if something comes up with our consideration of internal controls and our review during our test of the city's compliance with certain provisions that we think merit the attention of the audit committee or those charged with governance, we will be communicating those. And lastly, again, we'll communicate any significant matters related to the financial statement that in our judgment are relevant to the responsibilities of those charged with governance in overseeing the financial reporting process. Our audit does not relieve the management or those charged with governance with their responsibilities in providing accurate information during the audit. Management responsibilities first is the preparation of the financial statements. Second is the design and adherence to internal controls. And lastly, to provide information for the audit, including any written representations at the conclusion of our audit. The next slide just shows the engagement team. The main members of the engagement team are not going to change. The engagement partners are myself and Mr. Nitin Patel. We have two managers assigned to the audit, Tiffany Fang and Brittany Mello. In our contract, we had Mr. Callanan as the technical review, but since we've joined CLI, we actually now have all our audit reports and audit engagement reviewed by our national technical group. As far as the timing of our audit, we do our audits in 3 phases. Interim audit, which is normally, it starts really with May with the planning and in June with the inquiry and documentation of internal controls. During that time, we update our documentation and the information about the city's environment, including internal controls. We evaluate the design of the controls that are relevant to our audit and determine whether those controls, either individually or in combination, is capable of affecting or preventing and detecting and correcting material misstatements. In October, we will be back to do our year-end audit. At that point, and we do our our review, our account analysis, our confirmations and cutoff procedures, and our programs are specifically tailored to address any significant risks that we have identified during our interim audit. And during November and December, that's when after the city will prepare the annual comprehensive financial report, and that's where we will review it and scheduled to have the final issued by December. The next couple of slides, just to go over the upcoming GASB pronouncement. For this fiscal year, the main statement that the city has to implement is GASB 84 related to fiduciary statements. We've already had several discussions with the city regarding the effect of this statement. Basically, this is more of a reporting. It has no impact on the way things are accounted for, rather than this is more an impact on how some funds are reported in the annual comprehensive financial report. For next year, these are the statements that are in effect, and one of the big ones is GASB 87, with this regard with the leases, where what's different under 87, lease assets and lease obligations in governmental funds, especially during the initial year of the lease report, are now going to be reported as capital outlay and other financing resources, and any cash payments and treatment are principal and interest. Although this statement is not effective until fiscal year 2022, this statement will have a significant impact to the city, both in the accounting and reporting. And the process takes longer than expected to identify and evaluate all leases. This process can be drawn out from the start to finish and can take more time than expected if not started early, and can result in missed deadlines. So we've already had several discussions with the city on how to implement this statement, and city has already started the process, which includes the determination of which the lease and the population, and also reviewing the agreements to see which leases are going to be included in the implementation of this statement. Fiscal year 2023, there are the statements, but none of the statements would really have a material impact on the city. That concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. Any questions? Okay. Hearing none, let's move on to item 6A, please.
Item 6A, Internal Audit Activity Report as of June 30, 2021. Jessie Jung, Internal Audit Manager.
Ms. Young.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Audit Committee members. My name is Jessie Zhang, Internal Audit Manager. This afternoon, I would like to provide you a report on the internal audit activities for the quarter ended June 30th, 2021. As outlined at the beginning of this report, there are a total of 7 sections that provide a summary of what internal audit has completed in the past quarter. I will go over these sections one by First section is projects completed. So this afternoon, we prepared 3 PowerPoint presentations for the 3 projects listed under the completed project table. We have distributed these reports to you when they were issued, and these reports are also available on the city's website. So the first presentation is the analysis of GWP call center productivity before and during COVID-19. So this is the project that was requested by the city manager, and we were requested to complete this analysis as soon as we can. So our internal auditor, Ani Antonesian, is the auditor assigned and worked on this project, and he did a wonderful job. So today, she's going to share that analysis with you. So let me pull out the PowerPoint.
All right. Thanks, Jesse.
Ms. Antonesian?
Yeah. Good afternoon, Chair Amirian and Audit Committee members. My name is Ani Antonesian with the Finance Department Internal Audit. Today, I'll be reviewing an analysis we recently completed. As Jesse said, this was a management request. It wasn't a planned audit, and we were trying to figure out if a specific team within GWP customer service, the call center, was productive before and during the COVID-19 pandemic. So let's locate where the call center is. It's within the Customer Service Administration. There is a Contact and Payment Center. The call center is located there, and they have people call the call center. You know, they have utility bill questions or utility servicing questions. They call the call center, and they have customer service utility representatives that are staffing the center, and they do these 4 categories that we broke down for the analysis. They answer calls, respond to emails, web requests, and perform a variety of other tasks. So when we were trying to analyze, trying to figure out how to do this analysis before and after, March 16, 2020 was a central date for us. That's when staff were fully remote for the call center. And so we have these 2 periods in yellow here that are remote for the purposes of analysis that we will cover. And then the hybrid started when staff were alternating working from home and back to the office. So we wanted to get these nuanced understanding of productivity levels broken down between remote and hybrid and compare it to the blue pre-remote period. I think when analyzing productivity, obviously staffing comes up, and it's noteworthy for this team because if you can see, there was dramatic change during our 2-year study period, right? We start with 12 dedicated people that can answer calls, and as soon as the remote, people go work remote, they have like half of their staff, and the 7 people basically are there when they're working from home. So we tried to focus on those 7 people to do an apples to apples before and after so we make sure we're looking at the same people, right? And they also had overflow staff. 11 staff they get pulled from different sections of customer service to try to close out any staffing gaps. Again, the objective was to determine whether there have been any productivity changes at the GWP call center, and the scope covers the 1-year pre-remote period to the 1-year hybrid and remote periods. What did we do to perform this analysis? We reviewed all the automated phone reports that were available. Staff also had to put together manually some tasks. So we had a good understanding of the data that they had. We also surveyed the call center employees about the impact of remote work. Just to put this entire analysis into context, we did benchmark jurisdictions survey to identify, what are the neighboring cities doing in terms of telework policy. Where's my next slide? The main one. Can't find the main slide. the summary slide. Okay. So to summarize that, we had a slide prepared, but it's not here right now. We performed 11 analyses, and we'll review them in depth. We tried to cover metrics aside from productivity. We could have just stopped at productivity and said, okay, well, they're productive, right? But we wanted to put it into context and look at workload, the performance, because GWP was already collecting performance metrics. And we also looked at employee leave usage and costs. So the big picture, the finding is that staff were productive. They did more work, they got more calls, they answered more emails. Where we saw a little bit of a negative impact was the performance side. As you saw, the staffing had a steep decline, and so they were, less hands on deck, and they were trying to. The average talk time increased because they're spending more time with customers. It's a pandemic. People have these, questions come up, and they have to introduce more programs. So the queue time also kind of goes up, right? If you call the call center in the middle of the pandemic, it probably took you longer to get to a representative. So that's where we saw a bit of a negative impact. But otherwise, leave usage, employees were more present at work, and the costs overall went down. It's okay, I can just go to the next slide if you could just, thanks. So let's take a look at this one. This is one of the first ones, is total workload. So yeah, all of them are missing, I guess.
Is it possible that somebody's hitting the delete button?
Mr. Khachdurian?
Is it possible that somebody's hitting the delete button instead of moving to the next slide?
Let me find your most
Maybe you can
recent.
try to undo.
Most recent.
Okay, it should be in the main. It's okay, if you could just click on the, yeah, it's okay, if you could hit the presentation. Yeah, I just need to move on to the. Okay. Okay, okay, so we were going to show a couple of slides there in the report. As I said, total workload increased. They answered 10% more calls, 52% more emails, 138% more web requests. But we can move on to the productivity slide, I guess. This shows us on a per hour basis. We reviewed all of the task categories, so calls, emails, web requests, and miscellaneous tasks. Staff performed more work if you do not count any leave time. So this is based on actual available work hours. They, across the board, they did more work. All of the slides are missing. So one area of performance that had a majorly positive impact was emails. During remote and hybrid work, as you can see, staff did over 90%. They hit their target, which the target is to answer emails within 48 hours. Pre-remote levels, they had 70%. So this was a major area of improvement. Can't move on to the next slide. It should be where it is. Yes,
This one
this is
has
it.
it.
Yep, this is it. Yep.
for this one.
Right, so, this was the slide we were looking for here, kind of the big picture here. As I said before, the 11 analyses on the left side, and we have the metric types that we looked at, and the green is the positive impact. So overall, you see a sea of green, and the performance, as I said, was what was kind of suffering a little bit because of short staffing. This is one slide we haven't covered. This is just the volume of output that came through. So, you know, we have dedicated staff and overflow broken down here. The dedicated are just 7 people that were there before and after. So you see on the right side of the bars, more work means more work when they're working from home. And this is broken down by each, those 7 people that I was mentioning, you know, Rep 1 through Rep 7 for anonymity here. So each rep gets 2 bars here, and the left one again is the pre-remote levels. And once again, you see, you know, a range of productivity from 2% to 78% more. People were doing more. This is another another perspective we took. This is average calls answered per staff. So the blue bars are a trend analysis of pre-remote levels of how many calls they're answering every month. And the yellow and green on the right is the remote and hybrid periods. And the thin line you see is the staffing. So, you know, as staffing decreases, they are managing to do the same amount of work, and even during hybrid, answering more calls. This is the queue time. This is one of the metrics we wanted to showcase here, like performance-wise. Like I said, they weren't necessarily meeting the target throughout the remote and hybrid period, but they started to toward the end. But just before the pandemic hit, the call queue time was already up high because of they were losing staff. We also looked at were staff present more at work, and the answer is yes. They were taking less sick leave. Sick leave, in fact, decreased over 60%, and overall leave decreased during the remote period by 37%. And we also looked at electricity and water and power costs. So we couldn't necessarily look at the call center because there isn't a meter that's tied to that specific office, but we took a global Perkins building look, and I think methodologically it's sound because the remote and hybrid periods that staff were on at the call center matched the citywide periods, right? And so the trend you see here for electric costs, when you're sending staff back and forth to the office, it doesn't really make any change, right? The electric cost stays almost the same, but when you have staff fully remote, you do get savings. But for water, it's a more consistent picture because it's more there's more impact on an individual basis. If you have 5 people in the office, they use more. If you have 1, there's obviously less. So. We also surveyed staff, the 7 dedicated and the overflow staff. So it was 18 staff total. It was a 10-question survey, and they had overall positive impact of remote work. 89 to 94% said strongly agree or agree. They had better work-life balance. They were more productive when working remotely. Their team was supportive. The workspace was without disruption, and they had adequate access to materials and equipment. And that's it for my presentation. Sorry for the jumble with the slides. I'd like to especially thank GWP staff as well as staff from finance for their help during this project. And I can take any questions that you have. We also have Tammy Vallier, the customer service administrator here. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Antonessian. I'm going to open it up to questions from the committee members.
The only question I have is Alex Parjon.
Mr. Parjon.
It's from the analysis that was done, is there any plans to do more hybrid down the road, or even when things start opening up more, to continue the hybrid format and free up, you could say, space in the office?
Right. I do not, I would probably defer that to John or Tammy.
Sure, I'll try to give that a shot. I'm
Mr.
not sure.
Tata.
Thank you. I'm not sure I fully grasped the question. If the question was, do we have plans to go to some sort of a hybrid system or some sort of a system where we allow some level of telecommuting within the organization? And I'm getting a head nod, so I assume that was the question or the crux of it. The answer is yes. We're currently in the process of reviewing what such a policy would look like, what the implications to operations would be, how we would identify performance metrics to ensure that it's an effective system. Because what we did find in the GWP exercise was it was a pretty good trial run. It does work in certain situations, doesn't work in all. So whatever we end up doing is going to be well thought out.
Thank
Mr.
you. I'm
Parham?
assuming, yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm assuming there's some cost incentives for the city to allow that to happen, just because you save on, from electricity in the building to whatever other expenses you may incur having staff in the facility compared to working remotely. I'm assuming there's some stipends as well, right?
You would think so, but unless you're actually going to be shutting down entire buildings throughout an entire day, there really isn't a whole lot of cost savings. Whether you have 20% of your staff on site or 100% of your staff on site, you're still going to have to operate your HVAC systems, your lighting, and all the other utilities that come along with it. So short of shutting down the city on particular days, like some cities do with a 4-10 schedule, for example, there really wouldn't be any significant cost savings from that regard. I think it comes down to more of an employee morale issue, and in some cases, an improvement in performance and production.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
Chair Miriam, this is Ed Kashadurian.
Mr.
May I ask my
Kashadurian.
question?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Antonessian. Could you probably go back to the beginning of your presentation, or you don't really need to share the screen, but I didn't get the part that you mentioned where you had 12 staff before the pandemic, and then the number was reduced to 7. Could you just explain what happened that you had a reduction in the number of staff? Because
Right. So this slide here, so when the, pre-remote starts, the dedicated is what we call dedicated. They have basically just people who are there to answer the calls, right? They had 12 staff initially when we begin this analysis. And right when staff are ready to go fully remote, that number is reduced to 7. So they lost a lot of staff even before the pandemic began. Aside from that 11 overflow, I know this chart kind of gives the impression that they had, 11 people kind of ready to go at any moment, but that's not quite the picture, because these people have their own main tasks, and every time they get pulled to answer calls, it takes a bit of time. So it doesn't necessarily improve the performance of the call center, right? Performance-wise, like you might still have longer queue time, et cetera, but it is a help nonetheless.
I see. Okay. Looking at this chart, what crosses my mind is that, sort of piggybacking on the question that our other committee member asked, Mr. Parajon, I would like to caution you that maybe, trying to make a conclusion that the productivity has gone up during the fully remote or hybrid models is not exactly an accurate conclusion, simply because you're comparing different levels of workforce before and after. And that's usually the case. Take any corporation, any company in the stock market, if they have fewer people working, the productivity of that company will go up. So it's not necessarily because of the remote or hybrid. It's just that you have two different influences at work here. And in order to, make a more informed decision, you have to look at both aspects. Probably if you want to make a decision really on this, my best recommendation would be maybe consult a statistician or somebody to help you figure out what part of that improvement is really because of the remote or the hybrid mode, or what part of it is simply because that you're looking at two different levels of staff allocation. So that was my comment, and thank you so much for clarifying the earlier question.
Right, and I appreciate that comment. It's just one thing to note is, looking at this graph, like I mentioned, we are looking at the same staff. We specifically picked the 7 people that were there before and after to allow for that apples to apples comparison. So to establish impact or some kind of causation is hard in any analysis, frankly, right? But to control for that, we did take measures to ensure that we're looking at full-time employees, we're looking at the same employees. So we've taken different cuts of this analysis. Some you have, yes, like here we're looking at, everybody, what was the number of staff in each month, but we do have the answer to that. So I just wanted to point that out.
Sure, thank you. But still, I would just argue that because the landscape is different before and after, you had some substitute resources prior to the pandemic that you don't have after. Again, I would just suggest that take that into consideration.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Khachaturian. Just to follow up on that, so I understand trying to determine causal kind of relationships is difficult in any analysis. But what would you attribute the performance increase to for these particular employees?
I would go off of my own experience working remotely from home. You have less stress, right? I think definitely employee morale is improved when you're working from home. I think there are factors that we couldn't possibly have looked at. Maybe people are scared to lose their job. There are so many factors that, we haven't taken into account, but people were just working more. Maybe they're happier. They want to keep working remotely, so they want to do their best to maybe keep that kind of privilege going forward, right? Many factors. But I think it was easier to do this analysis because they had the data and they were already collecting it. So it was easier to establish that kind of, different perspectives to look at this data. And that may not be the case in other teams.
What prompted the request? And this might be a question for management or GWP. What was the purpose to look at this specific group, or was there a hope to take a look at a group where you had a lot of data and then maybe apply some of those learnings across the board?
Chair, meeting members of the committee, I think it was twofold. I don't think there was any one particular answer that'll address that question. I think it has to do with the fact that we are in an evolving economy. We're in an evolving workplace. You're dealing with millennial employees coming in. There's different sets of expectations. It's extremely difficult to recruit employees, and once you recruit them, it's very difficult to retain them for a long period of time because they do have a lot of choices. It's not always about compensation, although compensation is a major consideration. But quality of life is a major issue. So over the years, we have talked about various different avenues to try to address those, and flexible schedules were definitely one of those. With the pandemic, it offered us a perfect opportunity to take a look and try to somehow statistically determine whether or not it is an effective tool for us to use. The reason why I think GWP was picked, the Customer Service Center, is because they have already traditionally been collecting a lot of data. So there was hard facts that we can compare ourselves against from the past. You probably wouldn't be able to do that in an operation like mine where it's much more administrative. But GWP times just about anything. They track a lot of data. So based on all of those factors, I think the decision was made to let's take a look and see what we can find. And if in fact there is something that draws us towards one path versus the other, let's investigate that. But I'll conclude by saying that all the comments and the questions that the committee members are asking are very pertinent, and that's exactly why we're not just jumping in head first and developing a telecommuting policy that says, 50% of the time or 1 day a week or whatever that policy may come out to be. is what our policy is. It has to be one that makes sense. It has to be one that's defensible. It has to be one where we can track what our employees are doing. We do, we are in the public's eye. We're stewards of the public's trust, and that's something that we cannot risk losing.
Yeah, thank you. And just to kind of follow up, so, and I think you've answered this, you maybe answered it in your initial, but
Turn it off.
how do you see the learnings from this carrying over to other departments that don't have as much, let's call it objective data?
Yeah, I think the answer is we're gonna have to develop some. That's essentially what it comes down to is, if we're gonna do this, we need to have some type of a performance metric to justify that, number one, you can telework, and number two, that you're just as effective, if not more effective, teleworking. This isn't something that we would do out of the goodness of our hearts, really. Despite the fact that of everything I just talked about in terms of the recruitment strategies, the retention strategies, the expectations, the quality of life expectations, it still has to make sense for the organization.
Thank you. Were there any customer surveys or any feedback from, the customers for GWP in terms of what they felt? Was that considered at all?
I think we, did we review that? Tammy, do you collect any kind of customer information?
Chair, committee members, I'm Tammy Valier, Customer Services Administrator. We do collect customer data when we do surveys. We do residential every other year and business every other year. But for this specific period, we did not have a customer survey. We do have a new telephone system coming online soon that will do after-call surveys, which would have been perfect for this situation, but we did not have that at this time. But I can tell you that we did not have very many complaints, and I don't know if that was just that the community in general, everyone was in the same boat and they were very patient. Maybe one or two people that, complained initially that they couldn't come into the office to make a payment, but again, we had very few complaints whatsoever. But like I said, we hopefully will soon have after-call surveys that would give us some type of feedback on that.
Yeah, thank you. And to be clear, I'm not focusing just on complaints. And any type of customer feedback is beneficial in helping put some of the objective data into perspective. But thank you for that. Thank you for that answer. Do we have any other questions from the committee members? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Antonessian. Ms. Yang.
So the next presentation we have prepared for you is the PCI compliance audit. And you have heard Samuel's presentation multiple times by now, and you will continue to hear them in the next year too. So since we have a lot on agenda this afternoon, I would like to ask Mr. Chair if it's okay for us to skip the background portion and cover the findings for this quarter. Is that okay?
Yes, Ms. Yang, I have no objection to that, considering that this is a recurring audit. And I think the committee members present have a fairly good idea about the background. Do either of my fellow committee members have any objections to skipping the background portion of this?
Not
Okay.
good.
Hearing none, let's do that. In the interest of time, we have a good idea, and all of the information, by the way, on this specific audit is available. If somebody would like to go and look at the background, it's available online on the city's meeting portal. Mr. Salim.
Samuel, you can start with this one.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the clicker to.
I can help you if it's.
It's the top one, right? Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Audit Chair and fellow Audit Committee members. My name is Samil Salim. I'll be going over the second of the third planned PCI audit for calendar year 2021. Although we're skipping over like a lot of the background, feel free to ask me whatever you guys like along the way if you want a quick refresher. So just jumping into the current audit objective and scope. The objective was to determine the city's ongoing compliance with its PCI policies and procedures. The scope was based upon the PCI DSS, the Data Security Standards in Scope requirements as defined by the external qualified security assessor. That's the external auditor that comes at the end of the year to do their formal audit. So that's where we get a lot of our guidance from as well. As I mentioned, frequency, this is the second of 3 planned audits for the calendar year. And for the current audit, we looked at 5 sites, 2 systems, and 6 calendar tasks. Basically, the sites were driven by what happened to be open and accepting credit card credit card payments at the moment. And then so at the next quarter, we should be able to get everybody. The audit process is we conducted site visits, performed system assessments, verified calendar events. And what are sites? So basically a site is anyone that takes in-person credit card payments. Systems are basically think of your online processing of virtual payments. And then calendar tasks, these are the calendar events. It's just a listing of tasks throughout the year that we formalize to make sure that we're on the right track to do everything that we need to do. So those are the 3 things. Audit results. So from the 5 sites that we looked at, we noted 3 opportunities for improvement. Systems, the 2 we looked at, there were nothing was noted, and the task 6 all were completed. The 3 opportunities for improvement that I noted were for 3 locations. We summarized them into 2 overall audit findings. So the first one was there were 2 sites. All the sites except for these 2, for the most part, have credit card readers that just lay on the table. These 2 have these type of mounts. They're basically credit card stands. You've seen them at Costco, things like that. So we have to perform inspections on our card readers, but they can't be readily inspected because it takes a special tool to open them. But just and it's been the case for a while like this. But I just thought, we don't do it a lot. Let's just open it up and to see what's behind there. And when we opened it, one of the 2 devices didn't have a tamper seal on them, and then both of the devices were not noted in our city's device inventory log. That has they had the device, but they didn't have the actual serial number noted. So that was the first finding. The second one was, again, talking about these tamper seals. I can't show an actual picture of the tamper seal because we don't want to show exactly how they're laid out, but this gives you an idea, like when you go to the gas station, you see these seals that if it's broken, don't touch it, basically. So likewise, these card readers have tamper seals located throughout them that if altered with, when we do our inspections, that's when it knows to raise a flag. So this one site had a properly placed tamper seal intact, which is good, but it also had an incorrectly placed tamper seal, which they had to actually break to get to the correct one. So it's not nothing inappropriate with the device itself. It's just we just wanted to why don't have a broken seal noting there to cause confusion. So we recommended to take that out, the seal out, and update the inventory log accordingly. And those were the 3 findings from this round. All of them were rectified. No follow-up needed. And with that, that was my current audit.
Thank you, Mr. Salim. Any questions from my fellow committee members?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Just real quick, Mr. Salim. So there's no chance that the Tamper Seals were placed by somebody else, or that these credit card machines were messed with?
Yeah, I mean, that's a, so for the, you're talking about the ones that were on the mounts, right? For the one that did not have a tamper seal? Okay, so there were two devices. One had a seal underneath the mount, the other one did not. So nothing came to our attention that indicated it was tampered with, but like I said, that's the purpose of the tamper seal. They do require special tools to open them. So I don't think they were tampered with, but I mean, that's kind of hard to, unless there's a tamper seal that's actually broken, and there's no other way for us to know if something was tampered with. You know what I mean? It's like a system being accessed without anybody knowing about it. You don't know until you know. You're right. So, but nothing came to our attention to to think it was, but I can't say for sure.
Do you know approximately how many transactions were processed through these particular devices?
The transaction count? No, I do not. And I honestly, I would have to see if we even have count numbers for that. We would probably need to get it from the bank. If that's something you would like, I could work with the city treasurer's office to get those figures.
I mean, generally speaking, would you consider these, relatively high volume, average volume, low volume in terms of transactions? Are we talking about, dozens of transactions, hundreds of transactions, thousands of transactions?
I honestly I would guess hundreds, but I could be off on that.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to figure that out. Obviously, you don't know. I don't know if you're going to get contact if somebody. So, for example, gas stations. You hear about it at gas stations all the time. Somebody tampers with the seal. I imagine, there's multiple, dozens and dozens of transactions that go through.
Right.
Somebody notices that their card's stolen. Maybe they call their credit card company, get the card replaced. But it's very rare that somebody reaches out to the gas station or to the places where they went and says, hey, my credit card information was stolen here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it'd be a good follow-up. I'd like to know.
Okay.
And it's something just to keep an eye on.
Okay.
Especially if we're talking about high-volume transactions, capturing credit card information if these tamper seals are done.
Right.
It's funny because the people, in my experience, the people who are committing these types of acts have the tools necessary to access these machines. So it's just something to keep an eye on, and I'd love some follow-up on that.
Sure.
You could just email it out to the committee.
Sure.
Those
I think
are all
another thing to note is these
Ms.
devices are located behind the counters, right? It's not public facing.
So there are two types of, not two types, but there are two placements of a device. Basically, you have your customer-facing devices, and then you have your devices that are on the city employee side of the table. And then depending on where they're located, they have, like customer-facing would have more frequent inspections required, whereas the city side placed ones have less frequent inspections required. So these were both on the city side. So it's not like the public had unrestricted access to it.
excellent. Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's move on to our next audit.
Item number 6B.
Oh, no, just, that'd be Ms. Young, not yet.
Okay.
We're not going to move to the next item.
Not there yet. Thank you, Samuel, for the express presentation. So our next presenter is our Senior Internal Auditor, Nathalie Minami Valdivia. She has completed a research project on risk management function. So she will share today with you her research results. Let me share screen.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Marion and fellow Audit Committee members. My name is Nathalie Minami, Valdivia, and I'm Senior Internal Auditor within the Internal Audit Division. I'm happy to share with you today the risk management function research and staffing analysis that was completed this past quarter. Let me provide you with a little bit of a background. Currently, the City of Glendale has a traditional risk management function that is a shared responsibility within the City Attorney's Office and the Human Resources Department. The City Attorney's Office expressed an interest in learning more about enterprise risk management and the risk management functions and staffing levels of other government organizations. And with the current staffing limitations and the unavailability of documented current policies and procedures, a decision was made to go ahead and do the survey, the research and the survey first, and then decide whether or not the city would implement an enterprise risk management or ERM, or have the internal audit take a look at the current traditional risk management, also known as the TRM process, for potential opportunities for improvement. The safety and risk prevention audit remains within the audit universe and will be reassessed as part of our risk assessment process. The objective of this project, like I mentioned, was to provide management, the objective of this audit was to provide management with risk management function research results and the risk management function and staffing levels for each of the for other government agencies. And the project included conducting internet research and a survey to answer the following 7 questions. What is ERM? Who is required to implement ERM? What ERM frameworks are available? What are the differences between ERM and TRM? What are the benefits of ERM? What organizations have ERM, TRM functions? And what are the staffing levels at those organizations? To complete this analysis, we performed online research of ERM and other government organizations' risk management functions, and we surveyed 19 government organizations that included 10 of the city's benchmark cities. So what is ERM? ERM is methodology that looks at risk strategically from the perspective of the entire organization, and versus the traditional risk management function generally makes each department responsible for their respective department's risk management. And enterprise risk management is more of a top-down strategy that enables risks to be viewed holistically across the organization. This enables the organization the opportunity to identify, assess, and mitigate those risks that could potentially prevent an organization from achieving its goals or its objectives. Next, let me walk you through a summary of our ERM research results, including the requirements or the directives and organizations that are required to have it, the different ERM frameworks, the differences between ERM and TRM, and the benefits of ERM. So starting with the requirements, according to the Federal Office of Management and Budget, also known as the OMB Circular A123, requires that federal executive agencies and encourages non-executive agencies to implement an ERM function. So although it's a best practice, the implementation or ERM implementation is not currently required for local government agencies. So we looked at several ERM frameworks, including those published by authoritative bodies, including Coso, NIST, ISO, and the United States Chief Financial Officers Council. Each of the frameworks shared focus on identifying, assessing, treating, monitoring, and continually monitoring risks. It's important to note that a framework is a loose and incomplete structure that requires it to be tailored to fit the organization. It is intended to be a guide. For this report, we selected the Coso Enterprise Risk Management framework.
This model integrates the mission, vision, and core values, strategy development, business objective formulation, implementation, and performance to create enhanced value. The framework itself is a set of principles organized into 5 interrelated components that include the governance and culture, the strategy and objective setting, performance, review and revision, and the information, communication, and reporting. Now let's take a look at the differences between ERM and TRM. ERM, it focuses on all risks and opportunities that affect an organization's performance. TRM focuses primarily on hazards and other insurable risks. ERM aims to increase the organization's value through increased efficiency and better decision-making, while TRM aims to prevent or mitigate loss through insurance or safety improvements. ERM analyzes risks collectively, so how they relate to each other, and the overall impact on the organization, while TRM analyzes risks individually. ERM assesses risks and opportunities continually, while TRM assesses a risk at certain points in time. ERM takes a holistic approach that spans the entire organization and is embedded in the organization's culture, while the TRM is more siloed, which means that it occurs within one business unit and has disjointed activities. ERM is proactive and continuous, while TRM is reactive and sporadic. And lastly, ERM is risk-taking, while TRM is risk-averse. Next, let's summarize some of the benefits of implementing the ERM framework. ERM supports better decision-making by holistically looking at both the positive and the negative risks and collective opportunities and their impact on the organization. It breaks down silos and encourages communication and collaboration across areas of the organization that results in sustained and improved performance. It adapts to changing conditions with flexible processes for identifying risks, prioritizing actions, and measuring results in terms of the value created in the organization. And lastly, it promotes a risk-aware culture throughout the organization by involving departments outside of the risk management department. So now let me share a success story with you that that was shared with us by the King County, Washington's ERM program manager. So the University of California system has implemented an ERM function, and one of its campuses, specifically UC Davis, there are many olive trees on that particular campus. And unfortunately, during certain times of the year, the olives would fall from the trees and they'd create a hazard to cyclists on the campus bike paths and pedestrians on the campus's walkways. So the fallen olives and ultimately the olive oil from these olives would cause bike accidents that cost the university an estimated $60,000 in legal costs in a single year. Whereas the traditional risk management function may have addressed this risk in the silo and of the grounds division, the director of the grounds division, and the risk may have been mitigated by picking the olives or clearing the olives from the ground, from the bike paths and the walkways, or maybe the legal department procuring additional insurance. The enterprise risk management function promoted a more creative solution. So at the recommendation of the director of the grounds division, the university began harvesting the olives with the help of students and community volunteers and making and selling the olive oil. So the proceeds from these sales created and funded the UC Davis Olive Center. So this creative organization-wide solution not only reduced its legal costs and brought the community together, but improved safety while advancing its mission of teaching, research, and public service. So this is a great example of how ERM function manages risks and turns them into opportunities. So in our survey, let me provide you with a summary of what we found. So based on the 11 surveys that we received, survey responses that we received, 9 of the organizations had a traditional risk management. Additionally, the 2 organizations, specifically King County and Los Angeles County, they not only had a traditional risk management, they also had an ERM function as well. So those two organizations that have the ERM functions, we surveyed to see what frameworks they referenced, and one referenced the ISO 31000 and the other the NIST Risk Management Framework. So additionally, we found that the risk management function responsibilities, the responsible departments, the risk management functions, and the staffing models varied. What we did know is that all responses received indicated that they all, like I mentioned, had a traditional risk management function. And like I mentioned before, King County and Los Angeles County, in addition, had an enterprise risk management function. So what are our next steps? Internal audit recommended, and the city attorney's office agreed to document its risk management policies and procedures, and to work with the city manager's office to evaluate the feasibility of implementing an enterprise risk management framework to better align the city's mission with city council's priorities and city council's priorities with its strategies to improve performance. This concludes my presentation. I'd like to recognize and thank the city attorney's office for their assistance during this project. Unfortunately, the city attorney, Mike Garcia, was unable to attend today's meeting, but has offered to attend the next meeting or to email responses to any questions that I'm unable to provide for you. So at this time, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Minami Valdivia. Opening up questions from my fellow committee members.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Of course, Mr. Khashidurian.
Thank you so much. Ms. Minami Valdivia, thank you so much for your presentation. I just have a quick question, just for my own edification. So let's say if there's at some point in the future decision made to incorporate the ERM sort of approach in risk management, will this mean that every department, every part of the organization have to come up with their own? I'm going back to the example. Let me just say how the thought crossed my mind. The example that you provided, to me, it's more like a contextual example of what the ERM may look like. So I'm just wondering if something like that is your vision that will be adopted, and what would be a timeline for something like that?
Thank you very much for your question. As far as, yes, every department currently goes through and they prepare or they analyze or they identify their risks. So yes, every department would be participating, but like I mentioned, it is a top-down model, so it'll be up to management or the upper levels of management from every department to assess the level of risk using some type of a scoring system to see which ones basically rise to the top. And the other aspect is that it will have to be reviewed to see what other departments, in many cases, one risk is not solely contained within one department. It may affect other departments, and that's why we say that enterprise risk management, one of the benefits is it breaks down the silos and promotes communication amongst the different departments in management.
So the actual actions taken will be more of a case-by-case nature. You would just look at every situation, and then maybe a group will look at it in order to make a decision as far as what is the best approach.
Correct. So it is also integrating City Council's priorities and our strategies. So it's looking at the best way, or I guess a better way to look at it, it's looking at those risks that would prevent us from reaching Council's, our objectives or Council's priorities. So it holistically look across the organization and mitigate the risks accordingly.
Okay. Are there any examples that maybe you can provide of just something more related to the city of Glendale that we can maybe think about? I'm just trying to put things into context for again, my own understanding.
I'm thinking maybe a simple example would be something like if we were to look at each individual department and we were to, for example, if we if we were asking maybe the library, and this is all hypothetical, what is your biggest risk? They might say, because we deal with the public and because we have systems that you have to electronically check out material to residents, or they're using the internet services, one of our biggest risks of providing service is if we were to lose electricity. So if we were to lose electricity, that would be that might float high on their priority, or float to the top of their priority of risks. However, when you compare that to maybe the fire department or the police department, if they were to lose electricity, it would be more detrimental because they control our emergency response systems. So if they were in silos, for one department, what they think is most important, it might organization-wide not be as important. Well, there's a hierarchy of the importance in I guess, restoring electricity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be an example.
I think I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Khachdourian. Mr. Parhon, do you have any questions?
No question, thank you.
So just trying to wrap my head around kind of quantifying some of this. There's a lot of qualitative, but I imagine, mitigating risk and liability, there's some dollar amount that's attached to it. So, if you use the olive trees as an example, and there was a quantifiable dollar amount attached to what the risk those olive trees presented. And so in both cases, that risk could be mitigated, right? Is there any idea of how TRM compares to ERM versus actually quantifiably mitigating risk?
I don't think I have a specific answer to that question. So your question was whether, if there's any quantifiable information that ERM is better than TRM, is that what you're asking? I guess one of the things that I also want to point out in listening to your question was enterprise risk management also, because it takes into account both the positive and the negative risks, there are other risks that are non-monetary. So if our electricity was to go down, or we weren't able to respond to customer inquiries or customer inquiries, or if they were to call and they need assistance, it not only isn't a monetary thing, it's a reputational risk. So not everything is quantifiable.
Sure.
As far as dollars, but so there are those non-quantifiable things, and that's kind of the difference between ERM and TRM. We can't really insure, we can't buy an insurance policy for reputation risk, but it is something that we can mitigate.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's hard to quantify too, reputational impacts of electricity going out at the library. Obviously, electricity going out at a fire at a fire station, then there's both a reputational impact and potentially, a monetary liability to the city as well.
Right.
Would the ERM, would that just be, given that it's a holistic approach, the decision to switch over from a TRM system to an ERM, it would have to be done citywide, right?
Correct.
Okay. Excellent. That's all I've got.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Zhang.
Right. So that concludes our presentation for the completed audit projects. So now I would like to just quickly go over the rest of the activity report. The project in progress as of June 30th, 2021, there wasn't any project in progress. Moving on to section 3, continuous auditing. So under this section, during this past quarter, we completed 2 continuous auditing tests. The results from these 2 tests, along with recommendations, were provided to impacted department for follow-up or for their information. So one of these tests is a P-card related that was completed by Samil. And you have heard about this before. The one I would like to talk a little bit more about is the double dipping test between P-card charges and the employee expense reimbursement claim. We didn't find any double dipping, but this is the part that I would like to emphasize is this is the very first script that we developed by ourselves independently. So our team has been taking script writing trainings, and the team's scripting skills have improved significantly. We were from barely navigating the software and learn the functions, and now we are independently writing scripts. So I am very happy about this progress we made, and I'm very proud of Ani for making this breakthrough. So that's the I want to mention. So the next 3 sections, 4, 5, 6, are all related to audit follow-up. So section 4 provides us some.
Before we move on,
Okay.
yeah, can we get a little bit more detail about the procurement card test in terms of what was identified? So it states that 4 split payments were identified. 3 were split by single cardholders to bypass their individual single purchase limits. 1 was a split between 2 cardholders to bypass their combined purchase limit. Additionally, the split payment between 2 cardholders was to a vendor that had an expired purchase order with the city. Can we get some more details about what that was about? I imagine, assuming maximal good faith, the single cardholders were just probably trying to do their job. But is there something?
For the what's it called? The split between 2 cardholders, that was the situation that the PO was expired, and then there was an emergency situation that they have to use P-card to pay.
Got it. Okay.
But we did check with finance, purchasing, and there are other proper ways to do this rather than using P-card.
Right.
We
yeah.
did mention that to the department. So educate the cardholders to make sure these type of things.
So to be clear, each of these occurrences were simply employees using, or cardholders using, improper procedures in order to do something valid?
So far, so far, all the ones we've noted, right, correct me if I'm wrong, Samil, I think it's all legitimate business purchases. But, each cardholder has an authorized purchasing limit. But there's a reason there's a limit. So then, and the P-card procedure clearly indicated that you shall not split
You shall
payment
not
to
pass.
bypass
Yeah.
your authorized limit. So when this kind of thing happen, when we send a memo to the department, we first they need to remind the cardholders this is not allowed behavior, and then secondly, if there is a business purpose, this person often have to make larger purchases than his authorized limit, and then you can increase that person's limit so that he doesn't have to do this by special arrangement to bypass.
In the cases of these particular split payments that were identified, these 4 split payments, were the departments that the cardholders were involved in, were they aware of these before these were identified by audit?
Can you repeat that again?
So what were the departments, were the management of the departments that these cardholders for these particular split payments, were they aware of these split payments prior to the audit being done? Or were these discovered and made known to the departments as a result of the audit?
That's a very good question. I think we have seen both. I think there's one situation, should I, better not mention department, but anyhow, the situation is it's for purchase PPE. So then the department head was aware of, this person got sent to make some emergency purchases, and then he's aware of that he doesn't have that enough limit, or regardless, just buy as much as you can, right? Because everybody was fighting for those PPEs, so that's one. And there are also situations that the department heads was not aware, so it's that identified through our process. And there are also, because we've been doing this a few rounds by now, and then also finance, as part of the management review, they review the P-card transaction as well. So department heads are aware of this issue, and then actually one of the recent ones that we identified, that was also identified by their own admin staff. So I was actually happy about it. But then the two cardholder bypassed the limit. I think that's a little bit harder to identify. That's why we have this script written to specifically catch those kind of scenarios.
Okay. Take you.
You're welcome. All right.
Let's
so
move on to your
my
next,
follow-up
Michelle.
Section 4 summarizes the implementation status of the outstanding issues that internal auditors followed up with department representatives. So for this past quarter, we have followed up on with department on 27 outstanding items from 10 completed projects, of which 7 were implemented. So there were 20 outstanding items at the end of the quarter. Number 5, it's a summary of outstanding priority 1 issues. There were 3 outstanding priority 1 items at the end of June 30th, 2021. These were reduced from 5 outstanding issues at the end of the previous quarter. So I'm happy to see this list is getting shorter. So number 6 is on outstanding audit issues. Meeting certain discussion criteria, there were no audit issues that entered one of those 3 events that category noted in the report. So, and then the advisory services. So that's it for the report.
Excellent. Any questions from my fellow committee members on any of those final sections? Okay. Let's move on to the next item, please.
Item number 6B, fiscal year 2020-21 audit work plan review and proposed fiscal year 2021-22 audit work plan. Jesse Jung, Internal Audit Manager.
Right. I hope all my slides are here. So Mr. Chair and Audit Committee members, once a year, we provide you a report on the internal audit's annual work plan. So I've prepared this short PowerPoint presentation to walk you through the work plan report and the work plan development process. So there are two main purposes of this report. One is to provide an update on fiscal year 2021 internal audit activities for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021. And the other purpose is to highlight the audit work plan development process for the current year. So this report includes an executive summary along with 3 exhibits. Exhibit 1 covers last year's work plan status update. Exhibit 2 is this year's proposed work plan, which also includes a list of potential audit projects. And Exhibit 3 shows the risk assessment questionnaire we used in this year's annual risk assessment process. So in today's presentation, I would like to focus on answering the following 4 questions. What is the work plan? How it is developed? How did the internal audit do in fiscal year 2021? And what is planned for 2022? You've heard this probably many times, but just a quick refresher. What is a work plan? It's basically a to-do list. It's a list of audit projects that internal audit will work on in the coming year. This to-do list is not an optional one. Rather, it is required by the Glendale Municipal Code. So the GCC 208-130 state that the Internal Audit Division shall prepare an annual work plan based on an assessment of relative risk. So this to-do list is also a dynamic one, which means it can be amended throughout the year based on the changes in risks and the priority. So now I would like to use this one diagram to explain how the work plan is developed. So the work plan is developed following this we call risk-based work plan development model. You can find this, this diagram on page 4 of the report as well. So the work plan development life cycle is summarized into these 5 steps, but really it's an ongoing ongoing process, year-long ongoing process. So step 1 is a starting point for the new year's risk assessment process. So it actually starts right after or even before we file the work plan with the City Council because we're living in a ever-changing environment. Everything can change pretty frequently and fast. So the second step is ongoing adjustment throughout the year. We continue to receive information on new risks and requests from, it could be city manager or department director or you, the audit committee. So internal audit staff also may add audit topics noted when we're conducting audits. So depending on the risk level, these requests are either performed right away or added to a list of potential audit projects that internal audit maintain. So as an example, for this ongoing adjustment for this past year is the GWP call center productivity analysis that Ani presented earlier that was requested and added to our plan based on CM's request. So the next step is periodic risk assessment. We perform express risk assessment during the year. So one example of these is the one that Nathalie presented to you during our last meeting, the express risk survey on fraud risk checkup. So that's an example for the ongoing periodic risk assessment. So the next a few steps are related to the annual risk assessment. So once a year, a more comprehensive citywide risk assessment is conducted to assess a higher risk area and to develop our work plan for the coming year. So I will provide a little more detail on this step. And step 5 is showing that this annual risk assessment process also involves city manager, audit committee, and the city council for their input, their acknowledgement, and approval. And then again, this work plan is a dynamic and flexible document that can be amended based on changes in risk and priority. So next, so on this slide, I would like to provide a little more detail on the annual risk assessment process and the review and approval process and the back to starting point. So these are all related to this comprehensive annual risk assessment activities. So there are many things or tasks. Hold on. Okay, Lucy's offline. So there are many tasks happening behind these main steps. So tasks performed under step 4 include perform data analytics. For example, we calculate a risk score using available financial information. We analyze third-party vendor data, and we share this information with departments prior to the meeting so then they can review the data and they can review the data prior to attend our meeting. Next, we conducted a risk assessment survey. So we designed a survey and asked the department, please complete the survey, provide the response back to us prior to the meeting so then we have a chance to review the results and then probably do a little bit more research on certain answers and then so that we can make our risk assessment meeting more productive. So the next step is the actual risk assessment meeting. And at these meetings, with directors and managers from each department, we ask follow-up questions based on our review of the survey received. We review their third-party vendor information together, and we review and update their potential audit project listing by, it could be adding or removing or making changes to the topics. And then together we identify their top selections for each of the departments. So once we have met with all departments, we compile the projects based on the updated risk scores, and the department has top concerns. We have so then we have a complete list of audit projects with risk scores ranked from high to low, and we take this list, a portion of the top 20 or 21 around there, top ranked project to city manager, and to review with him and obtain his feedback, and for him to make the final selections to be included in our next year's work plan, proposed work plan. So the work plan in the Exhibit 2 is the one that we finalized and reviewed with you, the Audit Committee, today. And once we received your input and acknowledgement, the next step is to we actually submit a staff report to City Council. That report includes the annual report that you earlier stated, and this work plan. So after that, we will back to step 1. So then the risk assessment process starts right away. So it's a nonstop, ongoing process. So we have always been working on to do things better and make continuous improvement. So for this year, a couple things we did. One is risk assessment survey. In the past, we did provide a list of questions before the meeting, but this year we insist on department to please complete the survey prior to the meeting. So all departments did that, and this made the meeting more productive because we can ask more tailored follow-up questions. And another improvement we made is continue on our data-driven risk assessment approach. As I mentioned earlier, we provide a third-party vendor analysis to the department, and this year we automated that process. So Nathalie actually wrote a script to compile this information. So the part that's being automated is to the script actually will combine the contract and PO data for each department and flag vendors that met certain risk factors. For example, the higher dollar amount vendors with low remaining balance, and vendors or contracts that expiring in 2 to 3 years. So those are flags for the department, and we populated this third-party vendor preliminary assessment result and shared with the department prior to the meeting. So these improvements actually significantly reduced the meeting time, and at the same time made the meeting more productive. Everyone coming to the meeting well prepared, so it's an effective process. So now, as I mentioned earlier, our plan is dynamic, and here this table will show you a high-level summary what are the adjustments made to the fiscal year 21 work plan. The detailed reconciliation is at the Exhibit 1 of this report. So we started with the originally planned 21 projects. We added 10 new projects and reduced 5, either replaced with the new ones or reprioritized or reassigned. And the total adjusted work plan has 26 projects, and of which 22 were completed as of June 30th, 2021. So here is just a list of other efforts that we put into in building a productive team to ensure the quality of our work in addition to quantity. So you may find these detailed statement on page 2 of the report. So we continue to enhance team capacity and technical skills, maintain a learn and share culture, be more agile and efficient, audit areas that matter the most, and identify and communicate emerging risks on an ongoing basis. So here, saving the best to the last, 2022 proposed work plan has 21 projects. They are listed in Exhibit 2. 10 new audit projects were added, 2 recurring projects. These are the PCI audits. And of the 8, 5 are continuous audit and 3 ongoing advisory projects. In addition, 10 other potential projects were also listed in the work plan for this year. This is to replace, if you recall, we had Exhibit 4 for the previous years. It's a long list of potential projects. So this year we decided to show these rather than the long list. So then, of course, internal audit will continue to perform these routine activities such as risk assessment, quarterly follow-up, and provide support to Audit Committee. So that's it. That's basically a high-level review of the report. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone involved in this process, the directors, the finance directors, city manager, assistant city manager, and you, the audit committee. Thank you for all your input and provided to us throughout the year. I would also like to thank my team, Ani, Nathalie, and Samil, for your hard work and dedication for the past year. We actually completed the highest number of projects for the past 5 years. So I just, feel grateful to be part of this amazing team. And thank you very much for your support. And I look forward to a fun year.
Thank you, Ms. Yang. Questions from my fellow committee members?
Add your
Mr.
email
Khashadurian, it looks like you are asking a question, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Ms. Zhang. I really appreciate it. I think, the explanation is really very informative because I've always had this question in my mind regarding the process through which, your department goes through in order to come up with the work plan. But I would like to also add a comment. This does not necessarily relate to what you just presented, but in the past few months, in communicating with a lot of Glendale residents, one of the things that I have noticed, these are usually people who have maybe thinking about doing renovations in their homes and construction projects and all of that. And I have heard that a majority of them have told me that the process of getting permits has been a rather difficult process. Obviously, because of the pandemic, we've had longer delays. and I don't recall we ever did, at least in the past couple of years, have we done a review of the department? I'm not exactly sure which department this is going to be. Is it the building safety or code compliance? Maybe, I think, planning department. Have you done any type of audit of their performance in the past?
Let me check really quick. We have a permit fees, solid waste. I don't think so.
Okay. I heard the earlier presentation. Ms. Antonessian provided this really interesting presentation on productivity of the call center and all of that. Is it possible for us to do something like that, maybe focusing on like 3 items, productivity, identifying any redundancies in the permit process, and maybe looking at the fee structure, because I have also heard that the fees have gone up. Not only the wait time has increased, but also the fees have gone up, generally speaking, over the past year. So maybe try to understand what is happening. That would be, my recommendation. I don't know if it fits with the plan, but at least at some point in the future, I would make a recommendation that we consider that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Khashoggi, that's a very good suggestion. And I think there are a couple of things I would like to point out. We definitely will add this permit process project. We will narrow down the objective scope later, but into our audit universe, so that we can bring to the department head and or during our next year's risk assessment process, we'll definitely talk about this. In terms of timing, I think the city is currently, I don't know if it already started, going to do a fee study pretty soon, if it hasn't already started. So then that's one thing that right now may not be a good timing. The other one is the city is currently going through the implementation of the land management system. So then if we do any kind of a data analytics, that will definitely need the data from the system. So I think with these 2 reasons, it's timing-wise probably better to discuss this with management during our next year's risk assessment process. But that's a very good suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, any time that you think, you can just include that in your schedule, because this is not a concern of just one person. I've heard this from so many people, and the reason I heard it from so many people is not because I'm a developer or anything. It's just that I'm planning on doing something in my own property, but everybody keeps telling me, "Oh, don't plan it right now," and it's really a difficult process. It's a long process. The fees are going up, and so I was wondering if these comments really were at least to some extent true.
Chair Marion?
Yes.
If I may.
Ms. Flynn.
Audit Committee members and Member Khachaturian, the citywide fee structure that Ms. Jung is referencing, that is being handled out of the budget section in finance. The RFP has been issued. We did receive responses back from 4 firms. We have a team put together that are reviewing those RFPs as we speak, and we have interviews with those 4 firms within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I believe. So we are moving forward, and it will be a citywide fee study that is done by a consultant. They will be reviewing all fees that are out there in excess of $2,500, if I recall. So it'll be a pretty thorough review, and any adjustments will then go through the process that we do every year when we do the budget with City Council. That's usually when we talk about fees, and formal adoption will happen with the budget next year. Council does have the opportunity to look at those fees and look at the recommended calculations, and they can make adjustments on whether or not they want them in the ones that would be fully subsidized or partially subsidized. They can make those decisions, and then the fees are then set and adopted.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. May I ask a follow-up question?
Mr. Khachaturian, of course.
Will we be able to get a presentation after you have selected I think the consultant to hear what their methodology is going to be? Because I mean, I understand the fee structure analysis could mean so many different things. I mean, one consultant may take a look at your fee structures and then compare it to adjacent cities and municipalities. The point I was trying to make earlier is that, you know, as the city of Glendale, you know, we have, or the city is in a monopoly power situation to set these fees. So based on what criteria should these fees be set? So that would be another angle. So that's why I think more than looking at how they did it or like the end result, if we could look at the methodology, if the committee agrees, I would appreciate that.
Chair Marion, members of the committee,
Ms. Flynn.
Committee Member Khachaturian, yes, the actual process of setting those fees in many cases is dictated by state law, and we have Proposition 218 as well as 26. And there are requirements that need to be met in order to set those fees. We can't just charge for a profit or charge any way we like, and that's why we need a consultant to come in. And what they do in many of the cases, depending on the fee, and they are reviewed in such that staff time that is put onto those tasks and activities that go into that activity where the fee would be charged is calculated with staff costs, et cetera, to determine what those fees can be. So it's supposed to be cost recovery, and it's not supposed to be a for-profit. So it really doesn't matter what Glendale, what Burbank or Pasadena or any other jurisdiction is necessarily charging on those types of fees. It would be unique to Glendale because it's specific to the staff involved as well as those costs that are involved. There may be some other fees that would warrant something similar to do a comparison like that, that would not fall under Prop 26 or 218, and then we can look at it that way. But it is up to the consultant. I can definitely provide you a summary if the committee does want that at our next meeting or a couple meetings from now when we have more of that.
And Chair Mayor, and I might also add
thank
to,
you.
Mr. Tatay.
and if I could just add to what Ms. Flynn just mentioned, I'm going to look at Ms. Flynn as I say this, but I'm not sure that we had any significant fee increases in the last year or two, especially during the pandemic. If any fees had been increased, they would have been increased as a matter of either a 3-year ramping up process. In other words, we would have looked at this a number of years ago, and the previous fee study may have indicated that there needs to be a, pick a random number, 100% increase in the fee because we're under collecting for the cost of actually providing that service. Instead of passing 100% increase in 1 year, council may have chosen to do that in 3 years. So any fee increase would have been likely the last year of a 3-year plan. But in most cases, what we have passed along are consumer price index increases, CPI increases, which shouldn't have been any more than a couple of percent. So if there's any questions specifically about what fees those are, our fees are published online under the city's fee schedule, and we'd be happy to provide that to any member of the public or the committee if they so desire.
Mr. Khachaturian, is that amenable to you, or would you like a brief summary from Ms. Flynn regarding?
No, I think that suffices. The fee structure was one of the 3 things that I mentioned. My comment was more about the productivity of the process in its entirety, maybe identifying any redundancies, things of that nature, and of course the fee structure. I think the explanation was very clear, and I thank both of the individuals.
Yeah, and to follow up, I would certainly support, at the very least, adding Mr. Khachaturian's request for looking at the permitting process to the audit universe if it's not there already. And then we can kind of make a determination through risk assessment questionnaires and the process that audit usually follows in conjunction with management to determine whether or not it's something that fits into the audit work plan upcoming.
Yeah, we will definitely add that to our list and discuss with the management.
Mr. Parhone, any questions, comments?
No, I'm good, thank you.
I have a brief question. I know that recently there was a restructuring of the IPA department in terms of, where audit kind of falls. Could we briefly talk about that and what effect, if any, it would have on this particular process?
Chair Marion, I can certainly address that. Yes, effective July 1st, the Innovation Performance and Audit Department split apart. The innovation and performance portions of the function are now reporting up through the city manager's office. The audit function has come back to finance. And I say come back because we had the internal audit section back in 2015 when I came over as assistant director. I brought the function with me from formerly being the city auditor. So I welcome that back home, kind of like college kids who returned back home, and happy to have them back. So with regards to the audit function being part of finance, Ms. Jiang and her team operate very independently and objectively. Myself being a former auditor and city auditor, as well as a CPA, I understand the professional standards that they have to abide by and fully respect those. Any audits that they would do that could potentially maybe question integrity, or not integrity, I'm sorry, independence or objectivity, we do have an option if we can approve to hire then an external firm to come in and do those versus putting the team in a difficult situation. I can tell you, I can speak for myself, if it's for what it's worth, I would never put them in that type of a situation. They also do have the outlet of going directly through the city manager's office if need be, if there was any issues like that. So I was definitely part of the risk assessment process with the internal audit team. I joined in on some of the department meetings, not all, and we did look at the plan together once it came out as a draft, as well as met with the city manager. So definitely had some input with regards to that.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, and just to, I mean, this was, I think it was decided upon by the council, about a couple months ago. And, just because it's attached to this, I know that, I just wanted to kind of follow up with that. I am extremely confident in your ability to kind of manage this and also address any potential conflicts of interest in a way that would mitigate any concerns from an outside observer, including this committee, of any of those issues. So,
thank you.
I've been on the committee long enough to remember, when the audit function was, not under management, it was under finance, and then went to management, and then the new department, and now back to finance. So I just wanted to make sure that we kind of followed up with that here, and I am confident that audit, it feels comfortable too in terms of bringing up any of those issues to appropriate parties.
Sure.
Okay. Let's move on. Next item, please.
Item number 7, Audit Committee staff comments.
Staff, any comments from staff? Fellow Audit Committee members? From my side, just a thank you again to staff throughout this process. I know it's been an interesting year And, you know, I look forward to how audit continues to evolve and become more efficient. And just thank you for the work that you do, and I really appreciate all of the information that you give to us. And to kind of follow up with what my fellow committee members mentioned earlier, is it's important for the public to communicate. It's a difficult time. Everybody's busy. Everybody's focused on things, and sometimes it's, you know, whether it's through emails or phone calls to appropriate committees or commissions, or to the council members, it's important that you reach out. I think everybody wants to hear feedback because it helps really inform the decisions that are making and helps reinforce the work that's being done, the hard work that's being done in the city to meet the needs of our stakeholders in the most efficient way possible. And I think the city of Glendale is really an example in terms of its similar sized, you know, cities around the country of how to run an efficient government. Are there opportunities? Always. And I know that Mr. Tahtalian, I know that management in general, and I know that all of these teams are working constantly because I've had the opportunity to interact with multiple departments behind the scenes on various issues, and everything has been handled in an extremely professional manner and an efficient manner, and largely every concern or question or suggestion that I've brought up in my capacity as the chair of the Audit Committee, or even my capacity as a resident of Glendale, I've been extremely satisfied with the manner in which staff has dealt with that. So thank you, because sometimes, as most people who follow know, I ask a lot of questions. So I ask even more questions behind the scenes. And so I just wanted to say thank you to staff for kind of dealing with all of those questions and anticipating in large extent what those questions might be when they present their audit findings. So thank you. Let's move on to the next item.
Item number 8, new business.
Any new business?
Nope.
No new business. Let's move on to the next item, please.
Item number 9, adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Excellent.
And second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.